was supposed to be a quick stop, an inconvenience, not a nightmare. I was on a solo drive through Louisiana in the fall of 2021, making my way down from Arkansas to visit my cousin in New Orleans. I'd planned to take it slow, avoid the interstates, and enjoy the rural backroads and little roadside diners along the way. I had podcasts queued up, snacks packed, and a fully charged power bank. My car, a 10-year-old Ford Focus, had made the trip just fine. Until it didn't. Somewhere between Alexandria and God knows where, the engine started rattling. Not the kind of rattle you can ignore, but the kind that feels like something inside is trying to break free. I looked down and saw the check engine light flicker to life. Of course, there was no signal on my phone. I coasted the car to the side of the road and popped the hood, pretending I might somehow fix the issue by staring at it. The heat was suffocating, and all I could hear was the wind in the grass and the ticking of my engine cooling down. After about 15 minutes of sweating and swearing, a low-slung, rusted truck pulled up behind me. The words Terry's Auto were spray-painted on the driver's side door in faded white. The man who stepped out was in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. Tall, lanky, with leathery skin and a limp. He wore grease-stained overalls, a crooked smile, and a baseball cap that looked like it hadn't been washed in a decade. "Trouble?" he asked, voice raspy like gravel. "Car's making some awful noise. I think it might be the belt," I said. "You're lucky. My shop's just a few minutes up the road," he said. "Tow you there. Take a look." I hesitated. There was no other traffic, no buildings, no bars on my phone. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He hooked my car to his truck and we drove very slowly down a narrow gravel path that wound past some woods before opening to a small clearing. The shop was a squat metal building in the middle of tall weeds. A cracked sign above the bay door read, sure enough, Terry's Auto. He unhooked my car and rolled it inside, motioning for me to follow him into the office. "You can wait in here," he said. "Shouldn't take long." The office was small and dim, with a broken ceiling fan turning lazily overhead. The only window was covered by a heavy tarp, stapled to the frame. The air smelled stale, like mildew and gasoline. The door shut with a solid click behind me, and I heard the unmistakable sound of a lock turning. I turned slowly. "You just locked that?" "Safety reasons," he said, already walking away. "Don't want anyone wandering in while I'm working. Seen it happen before." I sat on this old stained recliner and practically disappeared into the seat. It was soft in all the wrong ways. There was something weird about the room. It looked cluttered at first, but the longer I stared, the more it felt fake. The mess looked planned. Too neat to be real. The magazines on the table were all from the same month. The wall clock was stuck at 3:12. There was a faint buzzing from the fluorescent light above and no sound from the shop. I stood and tried the door. Definitely locked. I tapped the tarp over the window, feeling for a seam. Nothing. Stapled all the way down. Outside, I could hear faint clanging from the garage, but no other voices. No music. No radio. Just that clanging. Minutes passed, then an hour, then maybe 2. My sense of time warped in that airless room. I drank some warm water from my bottle and tried not to panic. I knocked on the door, calling out politely. No answer. Eventually, he came back in with a fake smile on his face and wiped hands. Gonna be a few more hours. Something's stripped. I asked if I could wait outside. He said no, again, for safety. Said some kids had wandered too close to a lift once, and he wasn't taking any chances. He said it like it was rehearsed. I didn't argue, but I stopped sitting. Instead, I walked the edge of the room, pretending to look at the outdated inspection certificates. Then I saw it. A door at the back of the office, half concealed by a shelving unit filled with spare air filters and fan belts. Not a proper exit door, just one of those old interior ones with a push lock. I waited until I heard him clanging around again in the garage, then carefully pulled the shelf just enough to squeeze through. The door led into a narrow hallway. Storage on one side, a bathroom on the other. At the end, another door. This one had a push bar. I shoved it open, stepping out into the back of the lot. No fence, just trees. I skirted the building and crept around to the front, staying low behind the overgrown brush. My car was still in the bay, hood up, no parts removed, just sitting there like bait. I snapped a photo of the license plate on his truck, just in case. I sprinted for that gravel road like my life depended on it, and didn't stop until I reached the highway. I must have walked for over an hour before a pickup finally pulled over. An older man and his wife. I was disheveled, sweaty, borderline hysterical, but they listened. They drove me to the sheriff's station in the next town. I told them everything. The deputy on duty gave me a long look before exhaling. We've heard complaints about Terry. Nothing we can prove. Says he's got a right to keep his property secure. But you're not the first to come in with a story like that. I asked why no one had done anything. He shrugged. He's never done anything illegal, not technically. They gave me a lift back to the shop, this time with a cruiser behind us. Terry was back in the office when we arrived. He opened the door like nothing had happened. "Oh, she's back," he said. "Car's all done." I didn't say a word, just grabbed my keys and drove. But here's what still gets me. About a week after I got home, I was cleaning out the trunk when I found something wedged between the spare tire and the interior paneling. It was a laminated card, the kind you'd find hanging from a rearview mirror. No logo, no writing on the front. But when I flipped it over, there was a handwritten note in red ink. It said, "Next time, don't run." That was it. No name. No explanation. Just that sentence staring up at me from inside my own vehicle. I didn't know whether to report it or not. What would I even say? All I know is I sold that car a month later. And now, whenever I travel alone, I let someone know exactly where I'm stopping. And I don't take chances on charming backroad detours, because that man wasn't just being creepy. He had a plan. And I think I ruined it. In the summer of 2022, I was doing a solo tour up the coast. Just me, my guitar, and whatever beat-up motel or couch I could crash on. That particular night, I wasn't asking for much, just one calm night between gigs. I'd finished a small set in Chico, and I didn't feel like driving all the way to Eureka, where my next show was. So I pulled up Airbnb and found a cheap cabin listing just outside of Redding. Rustic, private, perfect for creative getaways, the listing said. It had good reviews, and it was only $60 for the night. Booked. The host messaged back within minutes. Super friendly, maybe a bit over the top. Sent me a bunch of emojis and said, "Looking forward to meeting you." When I got there, the driveway was long, all gravel and dust, with nothing but brush around and zero signs of life nearby. The house itself wasn't a cabin so much as an old bungalow with new paint. There was a beat-up Jeep in the yard and a bunch of wind chimes hanging from the eaves. I parked, stretched, and knocked. The guy who answered was maybe in his mid-40s. He had on cargo shorts and a tank top and smelled kind of like varnish and body odor. He shook my hand a little too long and asked a lot of questions. Where was I headed? Was I touring alone? Did anyone know I was here? I kept it vague. I just wanted a shower and some sleep. Inside, it looked fine. Not fancy, but clean. The host walked me through the house even though I'd only booked a private room. He showed me the kitchen, the back porch, the living room. Oddly, he kept locking doors behind us as we moved through each area. I noticed all the windows had heavy blackout curtains, even in the kitchen. There was a camera above the fridge, not a baby monitor or a Nest Cam. A mounted camera pointed at the center of the room. "You into security stuff?" I asked, trying to keep it light. He smiled too wide. "Out here, you never know who you can trust." I nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He showed me my room, but didn't leave, just stood in the doorway while I put my bag down. "Hey," he said, "you like wine? I've got a bottle open. Come join me when you're settled." "Maybe in a bit," I said. He finally left. I waited 5 minutes, locked my door, and then pushed the dresser in front of it. I didn't sleep much. Every time I started to drift off, I thought I heard footsteps or the creak of the floorboards just outside the room. Around 3 a.m., I heard a knock. Not loud, just 3 soft taps. I didn't move. They didn't come back. In the morning, sunlight barely filtered in through the curtains. I packed up quickly, grabbed my keys, or thought I did. They weren't on the nightstand, or the floor, or the dresser. I checked my bag, my pockets. Nothing. Then I saw the note. A handwritten piece of paper had been slid under the door. "Don't leave until we talk." My stomach turned. I pulled out my phone. No signal. I opened the door slowly. The hallway was empty. I crept toward the front of the house, listening. I could hear movement in the kitchen. The clink of dishes, maybe. I backed away. The door to the outside had a new padlock on it I hadn't seen the night before. I needed those keys. I remembered the host showing me the garage area through a glass door the night before. He'd left his tools there. Maybe he stashed the keys there. I slipped outside through a side door that led to the backyard, then circled around to the garage. It was unlocked. The place reeked of oil and dust the second I stepped in. Tools hung neatly on pegboards. Tarps were piled in the corner. There were shelves stacked with labeled plastic drawers. Screws, nails, bolts, junk. And in the drawer labeled spare parts, I found them. My keys. And then I heard a voice yelling. Didn't want to do this the hard way. I didn't think. I ran. I didn't even close the car door before I started the engine. Gravel shot out behind me as I peeled out of the driveway. No sign of the host. just wind chimes clinking in the wind. As I drove, I noticed a strange sensation, like I was being followed. I checked my mirrors constantly. When I finally got to a gas station 2 hours later, I walked around the car just to breathe. Back in the car, I started thinking about how easy it is for someone with bad intentions to use such a famous app to set a trap. And that maybe he had more than just conversation planned. I didn't stop driving until I reached Sacramento. 6 hours, non-stop. Once I had signal, I called Airbnb to report the listing. I called the sheriff's office too. They took the report but didn't seem surprised. A week later, the listing was gone. Not deactivated. Completely wiped. No trace. When the officer followed up, he said the place was locked up and registered to some woman in Brazil. No sign of the guy anywhere. Told me I was smart for getting out when I did. Smart or lucky, I don't know. All I know is, if I hadn't found those keys, if I hadn't trusted my instincts, I might still be out there, in a place no one knew I'd gone to, waiting for a talk that was never meant to end well. It was one of those classic college road trips. Impromptu, slightly underplanned, and completely fueled by caffeine, snacks, and the kind of restless energy you only have when you're 23 and trying to make memories before life starts feeling serious. My best friend Jess and I had left Denver that morning and were driving through Nebraska on our way to Chicago. We'd mapped out a bunch of scenic stops and roadside oddities along the way. Giant corn statues, weird diners, those quirky roadside museums no one else stops at. The day had started off easy. Good music, decent weather, minimal traffic. Jess and I had been talking about school, about her maybe moving to Portland after graduation, about me possibly deferring med school for a year. Just mindless future talk, the kind that fills hours. By the time we hit western Nebraska, a surprise snowstorm started rolling in. It wasn't a blizzard, but it was enough to coat the highway in that fine, slippery dusting that makes your hands lock around the steering wheel and your eyes dart nervously to every sway of the tires. The sky was that dull gray that turns everything flat and lifeless, and visibility dropped fast. Jess had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, headphones in, oblivious to the weather change. I saw a sign for a rest area, one of those basic ones. No food or gas, just a small brick building with bathrooms and vending machines, a few sad trees, and a lot of empty parking spots. I figured I'd stop, stretch, and maybe wait out the worst of the snowfall. There were only 2 other cars in the lot. One was parked near the edge and looked completely abandoned. The other had its engine running and headlights on. As I pulled in, I looked over and noticed a man and woman inside, seated up front, mid-argument. Or rather, the man was arguing. He was leaning over the console, gesturing harshly. The woman didn't move. She sat rigid, staring forward, hands in her lap, completely still. I tried not to stare, but something about the dynamic drew my eye. The man's movements were intense, his tone aggressive, even though I couldn't hear through the glass. The woman looked like she was somewhere else entirely. I got out and started walking toward the building. As I did, I heard the crunch of snow behind me. I looked back. The man had spotted me. His expression shifted instantly. His anger vanished. replaced by a broad, too friendly smile. He waved. "Everything okay?" I called out, half out of concern, half instinct. "Yeah, totally fine," he said with a chuckle. "She's just tired, not supposed to talk much." The way he said it, like it was a rule, like she was property. The woman didn't move, didn't blink. Her eyes didn't even track me. I nodded awkwardly and made a beeline for the building. Inside, I hovered near the vending machines and watched their car in the reflection. The man stared at the door for a while, then backed out slowly and drove off. Back in the car, I told Jess. She shrugged it off. She was still waking up. But something about that woman unsettled me. Not scared, exactly, but off. Like she wasn't even present in her own body. Like her body was there, but the rest of her was somewhere else, out of reach. We kept driving and ended up at a roadside motel by late evening. The kind of place where the front desk is behind glass and the carpet smells like mildew. We were tired and just wanted somewhere to sleep. 2 beds, 1 flickering light, and a TV bolted to the dresser. Jess knocked out right away. I stayed up longer than I meant to, scrolling through photos, watching the news, checking weather updates. I couldn't shake that image of the woman, her silence, her stillness. At some point, I heard a light knock. Not at our door, but faintly, through the wall maybe, like someone tapping or dragging fingers slowly along the drywall. I turned off the TV and listened. It stopped. A few minutes later, I thought I heard footsteps out in the lot. Slow, pacing, back and forth. Sometime after 11, I thought I saw a car drive by the front window again. No headlights this time, just the vague outline of a vehicle rolling past slowly. It gave me a weird feeling, but I tried to write it off. Around midnight, I heard an engine. I peeked through the curtain. At first, all I saw were headlights. Then the car came into view. Same model, same faded bumper sticker, same dent on the driver's side. It was them. I held my breath as they pulled into the lot. He got out, walked into the office, and returned with a key. She stayed in the car, motionless. They went into a room just a few doors down from ours. I didn't sleep. Every little sound from the hallway made my muscles tense. Once, I swear I heard soft whispering just outside our door. I didn't dare look. At one point, the door handle moved, just slightly as if someone was testing it. I pressed my back to the wall and waited until the silence returned. Around 5 a.m., I gave up. I woke Jess, told her I felt sick, and begged her to get moving. She grumbled but agreed. We were packed and on the road before the sun had crested the hills. Later that day, I called the sheriff's office. I gave them everything I had. The make and model of the car, the name of the motel, the number of the room they pulled into. I even tried to describe the man's voice, how he smiled when he said that thing about her not talking. The deputy I spoke to listened for maybe 2 minutes before cutting me off with, "Unless something actually happened, there's not much we can do." That line hit me harder than I expected. Unless something actually happened. I remember just sitting there with the phone still in my hand, stunned, as if it wasn't enough that I watched a woman sit there like she wasn't allowed to exist outside of him. As if it wasn't bad enough that someone could move through life like that. Silent, frozen, like a shell of a person. As if she had to be bleeding or screaming or already gone for anyone to care. It made me sick because I knew exactly what I'd seen. And every woman I've talked to since knows what I'm talking about too. That look, the hollow kind that says someone's living under someone else's rules. Conditioned, trained, erased. Weeks later, I looked up the motel again, tried to find some validation. But the room they went into, according to the system, it was never rented that night. No mention of the couple, no record, like they'd never been there at all. I never got a call back from the sheriff's office, not even a courtesy check-in. But I still think about her. That empty stare, the way she moved. Not just quiet, compliant. And most of all, I still hear what he said. She's not supposed to talk. Not she can't. Not she doesn't want to. She's not supposed to. I still don't know what that meant. But I've run it over in my head 100 times, and every version is worse than the last. That still messes with me more than anything else that happened on that road trip. Back in spring 2022, I went on a solo road trip. No one else, just my car and a backpack full of stuff. I wasn't running from anything dramatic. No breakup, no meltdown. I just needed to clear my head. I'd been working nonstop for nearly a year, barely taking days off. My inbox was overflowing. My calendar was stacked with meetings I didn't remember scheduling. I figured the best way to reset was to get as far away from notifications and expectations as possible. So I drove out of Salt Lake City with no real plan, cutting southeast across Utah toward Colorado. I marked a few scenic detours on a paper map I hadn't touched in years. National parks, obscure trailheads, little diners marked only by a neon sign and a prayer. At night, I rotated between budget motels and sleeping in my car when the weather allowed. There was something meditative about the silence, about the space between radio towers. Entire days went by where the only voice I heard was my own, humming along with the road. Somewhere near Moab, after a long hike and a late lunch at a taco truck, I got a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't check it, but I did. It was a photo of my car, specifically the back of my car. Parked exactly where I'd left it that morning, at a trailhead about 3 miles from the overlook. The angle was strange. Low, like someone had crouched behind a rock to take it. The composition had a kind of weird beauty to it, like someone had really thought it through, almost artistic. And the timestamp matched the window when I'd been far out on the trail, completely alone. There was no caption, just the image. I stared at it for a while. My first thought was that it was a mistake, a wrong number. Then I considered it might be a prank, but no one knew where I was. I hadn't told anyone, hadn't posted anything online, hadn't even mentioned the road trip to my coworkers, and the number didn't match any contacts. I replied, "Who is this?" No answer. I kept checking every 10 minutes for hours. Still nothing. That night, I checked into a small roadside motel outside Monticello, a single-floor strip with buzzing lights and a front desk that looked like it hadn't been dusted in months. I asked the clerk if the Wi-Fi worked. He just grunted. I locked the door, closed the curtains, and tried to dismiss the whole thing. Maybe someone copied down my number wrong. Maybe it was a glitch, a strange, one-time thing. The next morning, a second text came through. It was another photo. This one was from across the parking lot, a zoomed-in shot through the gap in my motel curtains. The angle was too perfect. Inside the photo, I was sitting at the desk in the room, my laptop open, a bag of chips next to me, mouth mid-bite. The timestamp was from the night before. I stood up so fast my chair tipped over. I yanked open the curtains and scanned the lot. Only a few cars. A pickup with its bed full of tarps, a van with tinted windows, a compact sedan with out-of-state plates. Nothing screamed suspicious. I went to the front desk, showed the photo to the clerk. He didn't even blink. "We get weirdos sometimes," he mumbled. That was it. No offer to call someone. No questions. Just apathy. So I called the sheriff's department. A deputy answered, sounding tired. I explained everything, both photos, the unknown number, the creepy motel shot. "If they haven't made a direct threat," he said, "there's not much we can do. Just keep your wits about you." That was the extent of their help. The rest of the day, I was on high alert. I didn't stop anywhere unless there were crowds. I started backing into parking spots so I could watch who pulled in beside me. And more than once, I covered my license plate with a hoodie when I parked. That night, I pulled into another cheap motel near Grand Junction. I picked one with a well-lit parking lot and cameras. Before going inside, I parked next to the edge of the lot and set up a decoy. I positioned a flashlight to glow faintly through the front windshield, angled toward the roof. I draped a hoodie over the driver's seat headrest, shaped it just enough to suggest someone was sitting there. Then I waited. I kept the lights off in my room and watched from behind the blinds. An hour went by, then another. Just when I started convincing myself I was being paranoid, I saw movement. A figure emerged from behind the dumpster at the edge of the lot. Hoodie up, moving slowly, looking around. They looked small, maybe 5'7". They crept toward the cars. Toward mine. I held my breath. They crouched at the rear bumper, then moved to the driver's side. They paused, maybe to peek inside. Then, without warning, they bolted. I opened the door and shouted, instinct taking over. The figure dashed for a dark sedan already running at the curb. It sped off before I could even grab my phone. I caught part of the plate, called it in. This time the police ran it. Fake. No records, no match, just a shell. After that, the texts stopped. But the damage wasn't over. 3 weeks later, I got a fraud alert on my credit card, then another, then an email from my bank about a suspicious login attempt. I locked down everything, froze my accounts, requested a new driver's license, changed my number. But whoever was out there didn't want to mug me. They weren't looking to scare me for fun. They wanted pieces, bits of identity, information. They wanted to own my life without ever being seen. These days, I still take solo trips, but I keep my phone powered off unless I need it. I tape over my plates. I don't stay anywhere without multiple exits. I don't book motels without private parking or more than one way out. I block every window before I even drop my bag. I thought I was being careful before, watching my surroundings, locking my doors, looking over my shoulder. But the truth is, I was only thinking about the kind of danger I could see. What I didn't realize was how easy it is to be hunted without anyone ever laying a hand on you. Because someone out there wasn't just following me, they were learning me. Through metadata, geotags, public records, they didn't need to break in. They just needed me to trust the technology around me, to keep sharing, tracking, syncing. And now I have no idea what they took. No way of knowing how far they went. All I know is someone out there built a profile of me without my permission, and they were close enough to touch me, but chose not to. That's what keeps me up at night. If you think road trips are just about open skies and playlists, you haven't watched this channel enough. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tell us your own terrifying travel story in the comments. Ready for more? Click now to watch 4 very disturbing desert horror stories. The desert doesn't echo your scream, it buries it. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.